Today I'm going to work on replacing the spark plugs on this 2012 Toyota Corolla with the 2ZR FE 1.8 liter engine. This car has about 91,000 miles on it or so now, so it's getting time to change the plugs. Probably could let them go a little bit longer, but the weather's nice now, and it's easier to do a job like this when it's warm out than in the middle of winter here in New England. The new plugs I'll be using are these Iridium Long Life plugs from Denso. The model number is there on the box and is also on the body of the plug there as well. The first thing that I'm going to need to do is remove this plastic cover that covers the top of the engine. And it doesn't look like there's any screw or bolt type fasteners holding this down. I think it just pulls straight off of the car, kind of like that. Okay, you can see there I was able to pull that right off in one hand, and there's what the backside looks like. So the way this thing attaches to the engine, you just have these sort of ball studs here that kind of mate to these rubber sockets here, and that helps hold everything down. It keeps it nice and tight, and we don't have to worry about screws or bolts or anything getting lost or any of that sort of thing. And I'm sure it simplifies things for manufacturing and saves the cost of a few screws for each car. With the cover removed and out of the way, you can see each individual coil pack here, and the spark plugs are underneath each one of these. So I'm going to work left to right just so that I don't mix anything up here. Not that I think it would be real easy, just due to the length of these wires and everything that are on here, and the fact that they're sort of color-coded. Each one alternates between black and gray, so that helps keep everything in order. But anyway, I'll start with the first one here, and I'll remove this by pushing down on this latch here and pulling this straight out of here. I ended up using a small flat-bladed screwdriver to push on the tab here and help pry this out. This thing was in pretty tight and was hard to get out with just one hand. So next up, I'll use a 10mm socket with a 1/4-inch drive ratchet to loosen the hold-down bolt on the coil pack here. And once that's cracked loose, this is just finger tight. Now that that bolt is removed, this should pull straight up, and there's a slight amount of interference from this connector right here, so might have to wiggle a bit. And we'll pull this straight out, and you can see there what the coil pack and spark plug socket sort of look like there. In order to remove the spark plug from the car and install the new ones, I'm going to use this 14mm deep drive socket. Now you'll notice this one doesn't have the little rubber grommet in there that most spark plug sockets would have to help grab the spark plug and pull it out with the socket. I don't have one of those special sockets. Also, you'll see that I have two short extensions on the end of my 14mm socket rather than one long one. And the reason for that is the cowl of the car is sort of in the way of getting a long extension down there. You can kind of see I really can't, fit it down any further than that. So what I'm doing is using one short extension on the socket, getting it down below the cowl, and then I can attach this one to the other extension, and then I have enough length to drop down there and get my ratchet on the extension. Now that I've got my socket and extension on there, it should be just a simple matter of loosening the plug. Now, what I'm going to do, because I don't have my usual camera here, I'm just using a cell phone to film this at the moment, I'm going to just hold this with both hands to try and keep everything straight and not put any side force on this arrangement, just so that I don't end up breaking the plug. Now, as I mentioned before, I don't have the proper spark plug socket with a rubber holding grommet for the plug. So I'm going to use this magnetic tool and try and shove that in there to grab the plug. And you can see I was able to grab it. And let's take a look and see what this thing looks like. Here are the two plugs side by side. You can see the old one's on the left and the new one is on the right. And the old one definitely shows some signs of wear, especially here. You can see the ceramic is starting to turn color here where it meets the body of the plug, and you can see the center electrode is worn down a little bit. But the overall condition of the plug looks good. There's the right amount of carbon buildup and just kind of normal looking color on the end of this plug, which tells me the car is running fairly normally. I'll try to show a little closer look of the center electrode here. I don't have my usual camera at the moment. It's being repaired, so I'm using a cell phone to film this, so I can't quite zoom in and do the things I normally would do, but you can kind of see it there, that it looks fairly good for a plug that's got 90,000 miles on it or so. It's actually not in bad shape. Another thing to do before installing the plugs is to check the gap. Modern plugs are generally going to be gapped more or less correctly right out of the box, but you never know if somebody dropped it or anything like that. So checking the gap is a good idea. I use a gap tool like this and just kind of, put the hoop in and make sure that the gap is correct. And on this particular car, I believe it is roughly 40 thousandths, or you can see there 1.02 millimeter. And if I put this through, you can kind of see that it slips through. There's a tiny bit of resistance there, and that's pretty much what it should be. Next up, I'll put a tiny bit of Never Sees on the upper part of the threads here, just to make these things a little easier to remove the next time I need to change them. And there's the plug with the Never Sees added. You can see I've got it to about half of the threads or so. The important part is to make sure it doesn't get onto the center electrode or any of that sort of thing. Okay, I'm ready to drop this back into the engine. Now normally what I would do is put this into the spark plug socket that has the rubber grommet in it to hold it, and then I'd be able to put that down in there and make sure things didn't get cross-threaded. It's very important, especially on one of these aluminum head engines, that you don't cross-thread the plug. But I'm going to just drop this in, and I'm going to do my best to not cross-thread it without the aid of the socket. I should be able to do it that way. I've done enough of these to kind of know what they feel like. But if this is something that you're going to attempt, and you've never done anything like this before, then I suggest getting the right tools and going slow. So I've got the spark plug seated just so that it's finger tight. And from this point on, I'm going to use this torque wrench to try and apply the proper amount of torque to this. A lot of people, myself included in the past, have just, you get it finger tight and then you tighten the spark plug about a quarter to a half turn on a cold engine, which this is. But because I have this torque wrench, I decided I would just try and use it. This torque wrench happens to be a metric torque wrench, so I've converted the 12 foot-pound, which seems to be about the recommended torque for a spark plug on an engine like this, to about 165 kilogram centimeters. So that's what I've got the wrench set to, and now I will do the final tightening here and torque the plug into place. Now that the plug is torqued down into place, I can replace the coil pack. So I'll drop the spark plug boot in, and of course I'll need to align this hold down ear with the hole in the valve cover here. But I'll push everything down and make sure it's kind of seated good on the plug. And then I'll use my hold down bolt. Now, as before, there's a little bit of interference from this connector here. It might be easier to remove it on this spark plug, but I think I can work around it. The key, just like with the spark plug, is to make sure this doesn't get cross-threaded. And I'll just tighten this sort of a normal amount. I don't have the torque spec handy on this, but it's probably not as critical as the plug itself. Now I'll just reconnect the connector here, and that just snaps on and clicks. And that plug is now done. The process for replacing the remaining 3 plugs is more or less the same as it is for the first one. So I'm just going to go ahead and step and repeat, do the other 3, and then come back when they're done. Here are the 4 old plugs, all side by side, and in the order I removed them from the car. And you can see they all look, more or less the same wear and same sort of carbon deposit and stuff like that. Over here at the engine, you can see everything looks pretty much the same as it did before, which is to be expected. So now I'll just put the plastic cover on, and I guess we'll call this done. Okay, so mounting the plastic cover is just a matter of lining up these rubber sockets to the ball studs there. I'll just flip this over, get it in the right orientation. So once I get it lined up where it needs to be, just a matter of kind of pushing it and snapping it in. That'll just about do it for spark plug replacement on this 2012 Toyota Corolla. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to leave a comment or subscribe, feel free to do that as well. Thanks for watching.